to the Afterthoughts podcast. We're going to be talking about sports in the Bible.
Oh, the Afterthoughts podcast is back, and my two co-hosts are better than they have ever been. This is Doug and Ethan. Oh, wait, no, it's not. What's your name?
Will?
And?
Zeke.
We got Will and Zeke, sons of Doug and Ethan, joining us for episode 59 every year on the Afterthoughts podcast. When we get to episode 59, we bring in the sons to do a little bit of trivia. You guys ready for some trivia this morning?
Yeah!
Oh, my goodness. Okay, here we go. This is how it's going to work.
Okay.
I'm going to ask a series of questions, and if you get
Okay.
enough right, we may or may not have a prize for you at the end of all of this. And you may not know this, but we have this great segment called Questions with Kayla.
Yeah.
Where Kayla is going to be tuning in with a few questions herself. So,
Who's going first?
Zeke, you're up first.
Oh, yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Zeke, who were the first two humans who ever lived in the Bible?
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve.
Good job, Zeke.
Survey says?
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay, correct. Will, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, there was a man who built an ark, a big boat in the Bible. What was his name?
Noah.
Woo! Yeah! Yeah!
You guys are 2 for 2. Do you remember who parted the Red Sea? What was his name?
I don't know. I could use some help with this.
Okay, you get a lifeline. So in this Afterthoughts episode, you get one lifeline where you can phone a friend on the phone. Ring, ring, ring. Say, hello, Will.
Hello, Will.
We are here on the Afterthoughts podcast, and Zeke has a question for you. Go ahead, Zeke.
Who parted the Red Sea? God. No.
Technically, God did.
No. Let me
Technically, God did.
I think I know. Oh, let me guess. Moses.
Moses
Yeah, good
working
job,
through,
guys.
God working through Moses. You both get a point. Well done.
Good job, guys. Woo!
They got to get 10. Okay, Will, are you ready?
Yeah.
There was a shepherd boy in the Bible who once killed a giant with a slingshot. Do you remember
David.
his?
Wow!
That's
Good
5
job,
points.
Will.
We need 5 more.
You need 5 more.
Whoa.
Okay, we're going to move to sports. A little bit of sports questions?
Yes.
Okay, Zeke, who is the best basketball player in the world?
Michael Jordan.
Fair enough. Yes. That's good.
Yeah.
We're up to 6. Okay, Will, who is the best football team in the NFL?
Broncos.
The Broncos. They're not the best. They used to be the best. They're going to be the best in the future.
Who is a really, really good golfer?
Tiger.
Yeah! Woo!
Tiger
Good job, guys.
Woods.
Good
That's
job.
number 8. You guys need 2 more.
All right.
Oh, we need 2 more.
Who got swallowed by a really big fish?
Jonah.
Jonah.
We need 1 more.
Okay, last question. What is Captain America's shield made out of?
Vibranium.
Survey says 10 out of 10. Yeah, guys. Zeke, good job, dude. Will, great job. I can honestly say with integrity, you are the best co-host I've ever had on this podcast. Let's give it up for Will and Zeke, the special hosts.
Yay! Good job, boys. Wow.
And after a quick cut, we will be back with 2 other guys to complete this episode.
Yay.
And just like that, Doug and I have both aged 30 years.
Wow.
And are sitting.
That was the
with
most
you right
fruitful 5 minutes of this podcast I think I've ever had.
Yep. There was actually
Amazing.
some Bible facts that were learned.
Yeah, they did
Those
great.
guys did great. They were
Will.
awarded Transformers toys.
Will and Zeke.
Thank you, Kayla.
You're welcome.
Very generous of you.
Yep.
A
Did
huge
my whole
hit.
paycheck for those.
We had taken them to see Transformers the new movie the day before.
Ooh.
It's animated, not Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf's not in it.
He's not.
Dang.
He is
Does
not.
It, does it hold up compared to the original?
Yeah, it's
Michael
awesome,
Bay.
man. It's an origin story.
I liked it better than any of the other Transformers movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, you don't get a whole lot of backstory
Yeah.
about Transformers in those original.
You ever
ones.
wonder where Optimus Prime came from?
Every day
Do you
of my
ever
life.
wonder if he was born Optimus Prime?
Every day of my life.
Well, see the movie.
Okay.
You'll
Yep.
find out.
Wow, I can't wait.
You will. And Chris Hemsworth is the voice of Optimus Prime.
And Key is the voice of Bumblebee.
That's
and
a
he's
good lineup.
hilarious.
Key from Key and Peele.
Key of Key and Peele.
Yeah.
Dude, he's so funny.
Will and Zeke were
it's
great on
amazing.
here. It's
They
good
did
to see
great.
that they are learning.
They know their Bible.
scripture.
And their sports.
Zeke has been learning about the 10 plagues
Tough.
in Egypt in school.
Mhm.
And I was quizzing him one day. And the Old Testament really comes to life in a different way when your 5-year-old is learning it. Because he's like, frogs, blood, gnats.
What about that last one?
And then he pauses. He's like, and your first son dies.
Yeah, dude.
And I was
Yes.
just like, ooh, yeah, that one's really tough, isn't it, buddy? And he was like, not for me. I was like, why not? And he goes, because we don't live then.
Boom.
Logic.
And I said,
That is
smart
smart.
man.
That's when logic's very helpful.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
Yeah.
great to have those guys on. We'll
Yep.
have them back.
Great guys.
We'll get him back.
Those are good guys.
Really
Yeah.
great guys. Yep. Kinsley
Yeah.
wants to come on the podcast now.
Oh, we
We'll
got to
get
do
her
it.
All the talk in our house about the podcast. Will was on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Kinsley asked me, she said, Daddy, are you in charge at church? And I said, yeah, I lead the church with Ryan and Ethan. And she says, is that because Will and Zeke were on the podcast that now you guys are in
I
charge?
like the logic.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Will and
That's
Zeke
how-
being on the podcast.
They kind of call those shots.
yeah, we're-
They promoted
yeah.
us.
Yeah, we're kind of riding those
Yeah.
coattails. So
Oh, yeah.
Those guys
Mhm.
did get a chance to. This is now rated the most desired podcast to appear on.
of course,
Oh, yeah.
so obviously,
Everyone's asking.
Congrats to those two peaking at 5-6 years old.
Kins
They're,
will be on it at some point soon.
Yeah, we'll
Make it
get Kinsley
happen.
on here.
That'll
and-
be
Kins and Ray.
a lot of banter.
Ray.
Ray-
We can get Ray on here. Ray
Ray's saying
is
some-
speaking
some
mostly his
words.
own language,
Yeah.
but a lot of what he says is just dad, snacks, dad, snacks. Trying to just get snacks all the time. That's all he lives for. Is just
Yep,
snacks.
yep.
Stands by the pantry, just staring at dad, snacks.
I love it, man.
I
Yeah.
hear you loud and clear,
Smart kid.
man.
That's
So,
passion.
We can
Smart
get Ray
kid.
on here.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's
If we had Ray
entertaining.
and Kinsley, Kinsley would be. She'll do some chatting.
Oh yeah,
She
He's a Chatty
is.
Kinsley, as they
Oh
say.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
At our parents' house in Atlanta, Will and Kinsley have a room upstairs, and there's 2 twin beds in this room, and there's a W above one and a K above one from across the way from each other.
Love it.
And the first night there, Will comes down like 45 minutes after we put him to bed, and he goes, Daddy, can you please come tell Kinsley to stop talking to me? So I go up.
It was like, I'm
So
just
I
trying to
go
get
up-
some
I've
sleep.
reached
Yeah.
my limit here.
Yeah.
Man. I gotta sleep.
So my first trip upstairs, I kind of I'm like, Kins, you have to be quiet, sweetie. You have to go to bed. And then 30 minutes later, I go back up, open the door, and Will is fast asleep, turned away from Kinsley in his bed with the covers over himself. And Kinsley is up in her bed, sitting crisscross applesauce, facing Will's bed, just chatting him up. No idea.
Hasn't even noticed he fell
No
asleep.
idea that he's asleep, just talking to him.
All right, we need to get her on here.
That's so brilliant.
Yep.
Speaking of
That's
guests,
great.
we've got a good couple weeks coming up
Okay.
of
Big
the
few
podcast.
weeks.
Yep.
Next week
Ooh.
is a brothers episode of YouTube.
Next week is going to be must-see podcast content.
Wow.
Yep.
Tell us why.
No banter at all.
We're gonna attempt the impossible.
We're going to try it. Everyone's saying it can't be done.
Attempt the impossible.
No
Like the guy
banter
who- yeah.
from
Keep going.
right
I'm bantering. That's why I can't be here for this.
from
That's all I
right
do.
when you click play. We're
It's
gonna
gonna be a
get we're
deep
gonna get
question.
into deep questions, incredible content, remarkable wisdom, all
Lives,
from Ryan.
lives will be changed
Yes.
next week.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we'll see about that. So then the next week, we will have an episode giving our thoughts after, thus the name Afterthoughts on the election.
The day after the election.
You want to give people just a quick
Who's gonna
reminder
win?
of perspective in charge before the election that's 2 weeks away that most people are pretty up in arms about and panicked about. Anyone want to just give everyone a little encouragement right now heading into the election?
I want
Start
to
by telling everyone who you're voting for.
I wanna
maybe.
read a-
Kayla?
You guys talk about that, and then I want to read a quote for us.
Okay, Ryan's going to read a quote.
And-
Kayla, who are you voting for?
Great question.
Everything in the election, and I'm not even making a statement about this side or that side. It's both sides. Play on fear and your emotions and getting you worked up. And that's what works the best.
Yeah.
And so give this election your prayers and your vote, but not those emotions,
Nice.
because Jesus is on the throne. And I know that's that's almost white noise now, hearing that.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. It's true.
Yeah.
God is in control. And so give this your vote and give this all your prayers. And don't just
Yes.
say you're praying and don't just worry.
Yes.
Pray for it, but don't give it your fear.
Very good.
Yep.
Ryan, have you found the quote?
Not yet.
Okay, we'll just banter while we wait for you. Kayla, did you decide if you want to tell everyone who you're voting for?
I'm voting for Jesus.
Isn't that sad though that we live in a time where you're like, I
Can't
can't
do it.
say it
You
because
can't do it.
half of people will think I'm this, this, and this. It would be nice to have better candidates, I would say. That's my thought on the election. But again, that just gives more reason to have perspective.
No,
and
that's
faith.
so Matt Chandler, he just started, he's like 3 weeks in at the Village Church into a series called Thrones and Thorns, maybe, but it's all about handling this right now.
Cool.
But talking about even the spirit of control,
Yeah.
the spirit of manipulation and control to the point where you're kind of bound. You can't have that conversation. You can't
Right,
say it right now
Right.
because of the negative fruit that will inevitably happen. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a spirit of control that has our nation in a headlock.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
It's pretty wild.
We were even talking about it yesterday as we were hanging out and golfing, trying to just get all the cards on the table and figure out like
Yeah,
what's
what
the
do we
best
do?
way to address all this.
Mm.
And so here's a 3-step quote from John Wesley that means the world to me. So every time I drive to go vote,
Mhm.
I go through these 3 steps. I met those of our society who had votes in the ensuing election and advised them, number 1, to vote without fee or reward for the person they judge most worthy. Step 1. Step 2, to speak no evil of the person they voted against. And step 3, this one's hard, to take care their spirits were not sharpened against those that voted on the other side.
Dang.
Come on.
Let's bring that back.
Let's bring
That's
it
really
back,
good.
man.
Mhm.
Vote for the person you judge most worthy. Speak no evil of the person they voted against, and to take care their spirits. I love that he says spirits because it's this whole argument exists in such a intellectual headspace, but you're the spirit within you. Take care their spirit was not sharpened against those that voted on the other side.
That's so good.
Right?
Smart man.
Because like I just said, we live in an environment where they're trying, like everybody's trying to get you to be afraid and get you to be emotional and get you to hate that side. And it could be so easy to say we're victims of the environment and of the political atmosphere and landscape. However, you take care of your spirit. So yes, you might live in that world, but your spirit is your responsibility.
Good.
And it does not have to seep into you if you choose for it not to. Uncommon ownership, you have that agency over your spirit.
So good, bro.
So guard your heart, guard your spirit,
Nice.
but stay in the world.
Yeah, still vote.
Mhm.
Still,
Yeah.
Still think about these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
so good.
Well, we'll have the election episode.
All right.
And then we've got some great guests coming up. Alan Graham, the guy who
Yes.
founded
Hmm.
Mobile Loaves and Fishes, Community First Village. He's
Shout
going
out
to
to
join us.
Alan.
Matt Johnson, who just ran across Texas,
Wow.
is going to tell some of that story and what God's doing in his life. So we got some fun things coming up
Yep.
Love it.
on the Afterthoughts podcast. We had Justin from New City Church
Shout out
last
to
week. That was
Justin.
awesome.
Mhm.
And the debut of Watch Doug. How has, stepping into the role of Watch Doug changed your life? You're really
I am
becoming this
just,
guy. He's a method actor. You know?
Yeah.
I'm just appalled, man. When is the church gonna figure it out?
Yep. You can be a little more definitive in your statement.
I actually watched more dad joke videos this week,
Oh, here we go.
and I wanted to share one.
You tell.
Yes.
So this is our new segment, Jokes with Watch Doug.
Yep.
Take it away.
Joke, Doug.
Went to the grocery store 3 nights ago. I bought 2 loaves of bread, an apple, a bag of cheese, and some ground beef.
Okay.
The cashier looked at me and said, "You must be single." I said, "How'd you know?" She said, "'Cause you're ugly."
so good.
That is.
It's so good.
That's a good one.
Oh, and
It's-
just hauntingly
that-
similar to every time I check out at a cashier. That's like my exact
Did they
shopping
tell
cart.
you that?
They don't tell me
No,
that.
no.
Sometimes I do.
Oh man,
You're not ugly, Ryan.
Oh, thanks. E.
You're average.
Can you
I
say a little bit
couldn't
more?
tell if
No.
that was part of the joke. Like I couldn't tell if like you were gonna go into a story or
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep,
And
which
that-
is the
Oh,
point.
dude,
you know
what
what
a
I mean?
great joke.
That's the
It's good.
or what the loaves of bread and the ground beef. Like,
Yeah.
oh, how does she know?
A lot
Yep.
of red herrings in that joke where you're trying to
Yes.
follow something.
And
but-
that's what you're trying
Yeah.
to do.
and that's-
You know what I
and
mean?
And that's humor.
Yes, at its finest.
Dissect it.
Which
Yep.
obviously leads us into our segment Games with Kayla.
Games with Kayla.
Games with Kayla.
Yeah.
'Kay.
So, Gamesla, let's do this.
Gamesla. All right.
Just
So I
trying
have
stuff.
some pieces
Getting
of
all my
paper
banter
by
out.
Ryan. Ryan, if you could get those out.
Got
What
it.
this is,
Great job,
this is a circle, and it has letters in it.
Okay.
But these letters all make up a word. You
Okay.
have to try to figure out what that word is, okay?
What's the one in the middle mean?
So that's what it's going to start with. So you guys get a hint.
Oh.
You guys like that's kind of
Okay, I know the first one.
Starts with S.
Salvation.
Ding 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 ding.
Nice.
Yes.
Are these
Yep.
all Christian words?
Some are, some aren't. You'll
Oh,
see.
secular words? I don't do secular words.
Yeah, can we skip those
Yeah.
ones?
Actually, I'll tell you guys later. Most words are actually rooted in a godly meaning. so
Oh
I've been
gosh,
getting
here we
pretty
go.
deep into
In
that.
Theos.
Okay.
So got that one.
Okay,
Good job.
Here we go. Starts with a T.
Tabernacle.
Wow. Good job.
Jeez.
Okay.
Philippians.
Wow. Okay, we're going to the circle now.
Augustine.
No.
Uh,
Antagonist.
no.
No.
Oh, there's 3 N's in this word, and it starts with an A.
Yeah.
Anti.
Whoa.
This is a biblical term.
It is
Yes.
It's a Bible
Uh-huh.
term.
agnostic.
No.
I should
Yeah,
just yelling them before I check it.
in on
Yeah.
it before.
Oh, I
There's
said
a-
2 words
there's
that
a
had an S in
G.
it. No S on this page.
Agnation.
Wait, we got this.
This is a tough one.
Yeah.
Is it a? Is it a
place?
give
Like
us-
a proper
It's not
noun?
a place and it's not a person.
Okay.
Is it a
Does
book
it
of the
start with
Bible?
anti?
Not tie. It starts with A-N.
And
I don't know.
whoa.
I give up.
Wait.
Here, let's move on. We'll come back.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, now we're into the secular.
Oh, pray over these ones.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ooh,
gosh.
bleep these out.
Is that an I or an L? That's an L.
That's an L.
L.
Or
Think of this
We
is
were
like
so good there for a second.
I know. Where are you from? Kind of.
Boulder.
Yeah.
Boulder for Prime.
Oh
Wow,
my
Come
gosh.
on, Kayla. This is ridiculous.
Is this secular or spiritual?
This is secular.
Oh, is there a divide, Ryan?
There
August-
is
August.
This
now.
This is what?
Just
Do you say spiritual?
context clues around here.
I know what it is.
What? Afterthoughts.
Yes.
Good job,
Well done.
Kayla.
Good
Okay,
work.
Buffaloes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
Boss.
go.
Okay, then go back to the
A-N.
Ang.
Ain-
Here, I'll start the B.
Angio?
Un.
Sounds like you're starting with a U.
Anointed.
Yeah.
Anointing.
Yeah.
Anointing. I see it now.
Anointing.
I see it
Yes.
now.
Clearly not much of that on this podcast. Woof.
Will and Zeke would have gotten that.
That was a
one.
good game.
Oh,
Great
somebody,
game.
Thank
somebody
you so
pray
much.
over this before we do anything else.
Well,
Yes.
Kayla, thank you for the game.
This was awesome.
Thank you.
That's a good, brain.
Yeah,
What do they
you
call
get your
that?
brain going.
Yeah.
Yeah, brain game.
Fart.
No.
Brain fart.
It's the opposite of that.
Out of
Uh.
context, that'd be a great clip. Three
write
Thins
that
probably
down.
programming his Tesla right now. Okay. Well, anything else from you today?
I'll do a
No.
Watchdog
Yeah,
segment
okay.
on this episode.
Yeah, you will.
At the end,
Pastor response
Yes.
to Afterthoughts episode 59.
just shakes his head. So frustrated.
Ah. Yep.
Watch Doug's catching on.
Everybody's
Um,
talking about it.
Before we get in our conversation,
Mhm.
tough weekend for the Longhorns.
Yes, it
But
is.
here's my optimistic take.
'Kay.
I think it was a lose now or lose then
Uh-huh.
situation. and they had the loss that was going to happen at some point in a very tough season or the playoffs. Now, learn a lot from that game.
Learn how to lose.
Know what it's going to take to beat a team like Georgia. And you saw that fight in the second half.
Reminds me of the New England Patriots in 2011. They
Oof.
go undefeated until they get to the Super Bowl against the Giants, and they lose. Some may say it's because they didn't learn how to lose throughout the season.
Wow.
Wow.
I thought that was 07.
It was.
No, it was.
I was in college. Like
I thought
fresh
that was
in
when
college.
we watched in 2012 in
They
the DR.
that was the second time they lost to the
Second time they
Giants.
lost to the Giants.
They
Forgive
lost
me.
to which is wild when you watch Peyton and Eli on Monday Night
So
Football and you
great.
see Bill Belichick there with Eli.
Yeah,
Oh man.
But yeah, they never lost. And then all of a sudden they were met with something they didn't expect.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
hope is alive for the Longhorns, also with the Buffs who won. I'd like to know in the comments how many of you have become Buffs fans through this
Come on.
podcast. We're hoping it's at least 4 people.
Hoping for 4.
Growing the fan base for
We'd
Coach
be
Prime
content
and the
with
Buffs.
3.
We'd be fine with 3, but we'd love for 4.
Love for
We're
4.
believing for 4.
Yes,
Mhm.
believing.
Yeah.
This is a big, scary, audacious goal. 4. Is that what it is?
Big, yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay, let's
Yes.
talk about passion.
Okay.
Okay.
This weekend was about uncommon passion.
Yep.
And I want to ask you guys the question of describe the time or times when you have felt most passionate in your relationship with God, or you felt like the passion level was at its deepest.
What was your definition of passion again?
Well, the one is the more emotive, like a strong, almost uncontrollable emotion.
Yes.
Then the other definition is the suffering
Yeah.
of Jesus.
Mhm.
So you kind of combine those two things. But when was it like, man, I feel this almost uncontrollable fire burning for God?
My answers always have to be with serving, especially with mission trips. I remember even post trip, which is not my eschatological standpoint. I'm saying post the trip that
Not
we
post
went.
trib. We already talked about all that
Uh,
weeks ago.
you can watch episode 50, 40. I don't know.
The return of the king.
When we got back from the trip in 2012, I started working at a great church in California, and I started going to seminary at the same time. And so my days became very like book reading heavy. My faith became very intellectual. And then I remember over Thanksgiving, I would get to go lead these mission trips to Guatemala. And so it would be like a whole semester of seminary and church and like teaching classes and all of that. And then we would get to Guatemala and it'd get back to just serving and helping people and not overthinking the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And those would always be times and weeks where my passion would come back.
Man, I would say there's a few moments where we made decisions to pursue a dream, plant a church, do a year-long mission trip where it was the point of no return. So either it was buying plane tickets, you can't look
Yeah.
back now, or selling a condo
Yeah.
and driving, across the country to move. And a lot of those, okay, we actually can't go back anymore.
Yeah.
And it's the point of no return. That comes from, it's an airline or a flying, I don't know what the technical term for, an aeronautical terminology, where you no longer have enough
Seems
fuel
right.
to get back to where you're going and you have to just go forward.
Yeah.
So that's because in those moments you need God way more. So every time I've actually been desperate for God to do something, specifically when it was a choice I made to go do this thing where, God, if you don't come through and if you don't show up, this is literally not going to work. I really need you. I really need you. I have the most passion. And that's less of like an emotive, I'm so fired up, and more of a desperation.
Yeah, which is good because I think we've diluted passion to be kind of a more surfacey emotional feeling
Right.
when it's a really weighty, heavy word, obviously
Very.
rooted in the cross. So and I think it's meant to feel like a weighty word, but
Yep.
humans have a tough time with that. So we've kind of watered it down over the centuries and made it out to be more like you can be passionate about a ton of things today,
Right.
but maybe not tomorrow.
Right.
I think there's a deeper burning passion that we're meant to live with.
Yeah.
And it's not based on circumstance or emotions in an ideal situation.
Mhm.
Or an ideal definition truly of what it means, I guess.
Yeah, but you can also, I think, put yourself in a circumstance by choice, by decision, where it's going to naturally create more passion for you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I recommend that to people all the time when I'm sitting across a cup of coffee from them and they're like, I haven't felt passion in such a long time.
Yeah.
It's like, well, when was the last time you really needed it? Comfort being, as you said in the message, one of the greatest enemies of passion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is my ultimate vice, I would say, would be comfort and wanting to stay there. And the times where we've made decisions to step outside of that.
Yep.
Yeah. So can you put yourself in a circumstance where you're going to actually need passion because you're going to feel it when you need it?
Yeah.
It
It hit me Saturday night that passion tends to be, I think, in a lot of people's minds, like part of your young Christian phase.
Right.
And the thought just hit me. You weren't passionate back then because you were youthful. It's because you were faithful.
Yeah.
And I look back on that time in my life, and that was so true for me when I felt the most on fire when I was new in my faith, or on some of those trips, or just in seasons of life where you're like on fire for God. Is actually just because you were faithfully following him, leaning on him,
Yeah.
desperate for him.
This
right?
is, I think this is a really important point. Passion has little to do with age and a lot to do with obedience. It's just that the older you get, the harder it is to be obedient and to stay obedient because there's more chips to put into the middle of the table. The stakes are higher and all that. But that whole narrative of like, well, yeah, they're just passionate because they're young. It's like, no, I reject that. They're passionate because they're being obedient.
Yeah. Some of the most passionate people in our church that will come up, and I can just feel it when I talk to them, are probably in their 50s, 60s, 70s.
Totally.
That it's not an age thing for them. It's that fire that they've kind of learned to just live with. And it doesn't have to be based on circumstance. Kayla, you said something interesting when we were talking about passion, about finding some of your most passionate times with God were in really tough times, where I think most people think it's when you're on a mission trip high or everything's kind of clicked and you're like, God is so good. But share a little bit about how you have found passion.
Yeah, it's like in those times where something really hard in life is happening to you, you don't base it off of your emotions of that, because there's been really hard moments in my life and I felt like I could only cling to Jesus, and like my passion for him was so strong because it was the only thing like kind of holding like that I could hold on to. And then there's also been times where it's been like super great in life where it's like, yeah, I like love the Lord, like he is providing and like he is my provision, like all that stuff. But it's kind of like finding the passion in the mundane. I think that's where a lot of people might lack in it. But yeah, even in like the darkest times, I feel like that's almost where I can look back and be like, I was so passionate for the Lord because I didn't have anything else to like hold on to besides him.
Yeah, that's good.
So
Yeah.
So I painted the picture of the difference between David and his wife, Matott, who both had, so it's funny, a parallel. We were talking about the Transformers movie.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
Oh, here we go.
But you've got these two characters who have the same backstory, really.
Yes.
But they end up on opposite ends of
Correct.
the story. And that's kind of like these two. They've gone through a lot of similar painful things and trials and struggling and the suffering, all those things kind of are going to push you one way or the other. You're going to have to either go all my chips in on my passionate relationship with God and lean on him, or I'm going to end up in a window watching and criticizing and judging. And they went in these two opposite directions. But I didn't want to get too in the weeds in that story itself, but you could sit there longer and talk more about David and how he reacted with passion, even momentarily, not just based off his whole life struggle, but right before David's dancing in the streets in Jerusalem, he had tried to bring the Ark of the Covenant in, but they put it on a cart, just like the Philistines had done. But the instruction was always that it's like, I heard a pastor say, the presence of God is meant to be carried by men, not their methods. So the Philistines had a method that they tried to carry it with, but it was meant to be carried by the priests. The men were supposed to carry in the presence of God, but David didn't do it right. And when that happened, the ox stumbled. This guy reaches to grab it and just dies.
Yeah.
Which is a very extreme consequence. The presence of God is very powerful, right?
Yeah.
They misstep, and David's mad at God that this happened.
Sure.
Which is kind of how things, I mean, I realize it's very extreme. Uzzah, I think is the guy's name.
Yeah.
So huge bummer for him.
Yeah.
But when we misstep, we'll blame God if something doesn't go the way that we think it should. So David's actually, right before he's dancing in the streets, he is angry at God. And he's not feeling passionate in his faith. But the second that he realizes that the place that they then stored it in, because David wasn't sure, he's like, oh, I don't know quite what to do now. I don't know if I want to even bring it in. So he stores it at this guy's house, and blessing just starts pouring down on this house. And he recognizes like, I can't fight against the presence of God and I need to bring it in here, but we got to do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy can go from one day of being angry at God, but the next day he's dancing in the streets with passion for God.
Yeah.
That's not based on how he's feeling, because he ultimately humbles himself and comes back to remembering who God is and who he is in light of it.
Mm-hmm.
So he can still dance in the streets, even though he was just mad at God.
Mm-hmm.
His wife can't do that. She's got a lot of reasons to be mad at
Man.
God, but she can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the deeper invitation that I hope people hear into passion. And I wanted to not communicate this in like a, look at all you lackluster Christians, you know, like you have no passion and you guys suck. But instead, like, I think we all just long for that. We
Big
want
time.
it back if we don't have it, or we want more of it if we do.
Big time.
And that's why I love that revelation too. You've left your first love.
Yeah.
So go back and get it. It's not like Jesus is saying that's their final sentence of
Right.
like, so see you later.
Right.
He then gives the instructions of remember from where you fall and remember what it was like back then.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And turn to me, repent, and then start doing the things you did at first. So let me ask you guys this. In light of that whole story, what are some things that you have come back to over and over that it's almost like we forget, like, oh yeah, that cultivates my passion, that stirs my passion for God. That wasn't youthful, it was faithful in my life.
Yeah. Well, there's an obvious one. And first of all, I love how it just says the things you were doing.
Mhm.
So there's things that you do that lead to feeling passion for God.
Yeah.
And then there's things that you do that lead to you feeling apathetic.
Yes.
And so what's the formula? We always say it's not a formula. So, well, but there is a beautiful redeemed version of religion where you create a lifestyle and daily habits,
Yes.
do the things
Yeah.
that lead you to a passionate relationship with
Right.
God. You know, the one that I realized, and the sermon was so good for me, because I had just finished like 2.5 weeks of, so like 2.5 of the busiest weeks of my entire life
Yeah.
with 3 trips and preaching twice and meetings and this thing. And then finally finished, I had a finish line 2 Sundays ago.
Mhm.
And I spent a whole week, and it was really nothing bad, but it was just, there was no solitude with God. I had no silence. I had no break from the noise. It was constant podcasts. It was, there's always something on the screen at night after the kids go to bed. And in my car, you know, it's loud music, or it's stuff about the election, or even it's all good, or leadership podcasts. It's like all good stuff, you know, even at night. Like some nights we'd have like we're watching The Chosen, and some nights we're watching football, and some nights, but at the end of it, I'm like, I've had so much noise. And my intake is overload. One thing we said a lot in the brainstorm thing we did about a year ago was like, you're praying for passion, you're praying for peace, you're praying for joy, and God's like, I'd love to give you some. I got nowhere to put it because you are on absolute content overload.
Totally.
And
It's good.
so one of the things I used to do that I've been doing for the last couple days is just at night or early in the morning, just going out to my backyard with no worship music. Because even that can sometimes be intake.
Yeah.
It's just like under the stars. Weather is beautiful right now. And just sit for 30 minutes
Dang, that's
and
good.
actually create some, and starting to feel flickers of a passion that the busyness kind of stole from me.
Yeah.
Come back.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So good, man. One that's on my heart, and I think I'm going to talk about it a little bit this week, is getting back to books that fired me up back in the day or helped make sense of God back in the day. And I've been rereading a couple of them. And I think I've always seen my walk with God as this like mountain that I keep climbing and I keep getting closer to the top. I think I see it more now as this like never-ending eternal journey. And so I would like not want to reread books because it would be like, no, I got that one. That was from back down there. And it's more like, no, as you keep going, like these books just keep bringing you back to Jesus, which is where all the passion is at. And so it's like I feel this passion coming back, and it's a similar passion to what I had 15 years ago when I read it the first time. And so there's something about like remembering what you did at first, something about like reading the books you read at first, listening to the worship songs you listened to at first, it just brings you back.
Yeah. Hebrews 12, we have come back to a lot in this series. And as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about we've all mentioned this, I think, separately in sermons, but when it says, consider him,
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of the things that I used to do way more than I do now, is just consider Jesus. No matter where I was or what I was doing, I was always thinking about like him and who he was and what he would do and how he would go about this or how he felt about this, just considering him all the time. Sometimes I go on walks, just walk my dog, and I picture like the dude from The Chosen walking with me,
Yeah.
but like considering him and like, what's he trying to speak to me right now? What's he up to? Or just thinking about what he's done and what he said and who he is. And all the noise and, other things can just lead us to, I think, sometimes read the Bible, do a quiet time or whatever, back to the task list, or like, yeah, I need to do this because it's important, but to stop and just consider him. That's what prepping this sermon revived so much passion even more in me, like studying it and wanting it and thinking it, because I spent a lot of the time realizing like the passion of Jesus is the root of all passion.
Yeah.
And if like listening to that hymn, how deep the Father's love for us, over and over, and just considering him and what he did was this revival that then I think when you're rooted in that passion for Jesus, then you're a more passionate husband, a more passionate dad, a more passionate coworker, employee, boss, whatever, because you have that deep well of passion that's not emotive. It's based in the facts and the truth of what he did.
Yeah.
Wow.
Man, well, I really need it right now. I've been dry of that.
Yeah.
Like on empty.
Yeah.
And feeling sometimes like a victim to the season or the circumstance of, well, when am I going to do that? When am I going to, I go back to something somebody said to you once. He was like a CEO, way busier than I'll ever be. And he was asked, how do you find time? He goes, oh, you make it.
Yeah, you just do
make
it.
time.
You just
do it
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
So stop saying
Yes.
how busy you are.
Yeah.
Because you actually can make time to do that. You have agency within you.
You can do it.
Stop giving your agency to your season and you create it. Stop giving your agency to your inbox. You tithe your time to God because you decide to do it.
Yeah.
I really just need to do that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Okay.
Maybe an example from your lives of where you felt like in struggle, suffering, sacrifice, trial, whatever you want to call it, where perseverance out of that built this passionate character and hope in you. That Romans 5 passage is so good. It's funny when, it's like faith is not a formula, yes, but God gives us a lot of formulas in the Bible on how to practically live, like the 3 things in Revelation. Like, hey, in your suffering, if you persevere, it will develop in you character that will lead you to a hope that is not tied to your circumstance. That is the thing that could drive you the other way from it. So what's an example in your life where you feel like, man, I persevered, or like God gave me strength to walk through that, and out of that came this character and hope that I didn't have before that. Kayla, pitch in too if you've got something.
I have seminary on my heart today. It just keeps coming back. And so, I spent 6 years getting a 2-year degree because I would just go like
You were the Van Wilder of
exactly.
seminary. Yeah.
No, I was a
yeah.
full-time pastor.
Yeah.
And so then I would go on like Wednesday nights from 6 to 9 p.m. I would stop and get a cup of coffee and a cookie, and I would sit down in this lecture for 3 hours. And at first, man, it was so good. And then it got to a point where part of it felt redundant. Part of it was just like, I want to read the books I want to read. I don't want to see this through. But I look back and I'm like, yeah, but I'm 4.5 years into this and I've spent all of this money on it. Like I should get to the finish line. And a couple of those last classes, honestly, like I was a little bitter even going into them. But then I got to the end of it and I look back on that time, and it's such a sweet time for me where I feel like the Lord was teaching me a lot, but also challenging me and challenging the way that I communicate, challenging the way that I think about who he is, challenging the way I think about the Bible. Like I'm so grateful to have such like a firm foundation and all that stuff. And I almost punted on it about 10 different times throughout the course of those 6 years.
That's cool.
I had 2 things that come to mind. Number 1 is chronic pain stuff.
Yeah.
And specifically migraine nights where every like minute feels like an hour and you can't sleep and you're just on the living room floor. And I've had hundreds of those. And they suck. And I dread them every time. And I get mad at God on my living room floor every time and wrestle. And, you know, and then by like, you know, noon the next day, it thaws and it kind of disappears. And I feel like renewed, refined. I talk less for the next couple days, not because I'm less passionate, but because I'm almost more, you know, but I'm slower to speak and I just feel closer to God. So I would say that. And then the one that you pointed out is just marriage. Sam would say the exact same thing. You know, we're 10 years in and 13 and a half years, if you count how long we've been together total.
No, it doesn't count, man.
Doesn't count.
10.
But that was through, you know, that was
Yeah, I
through
don't
a
really
year.
see dating in the Bible, so I don't know why that would count.
Well, we were dating. It was a year of not seeing each other because we were traveling.
Oh, yeah.
And then really hard start to our marriage with a lot of things that we were walking through and going through. And for both of us, a lot of times it was, we choose each other. We don't feel this, we choose it.
Yep.
And I don't know, man. Like I get so passionate when I talk about marriage in a sermon or when I'm sitting in a meeting with somebody and they're going through that. I get like fired up in a good way. I'm like, borrow some of my passion. Every study shows that if you're a marriage and it's in a hard season, you are 5 years, maybe less, away from a really good season. All you have to do is persevere. All you have to do is stay.
Wow. Yeah.
But that passion is being forged because it's not free. And this is how it's being developed within you.
Yeah.
And you are closer than you think to feeling the good parts of it. All you have to do is keep going.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, same for us. We specifically, I think at the time when we had moved here, we planted a church, had our first kid, a lot of things, just a lot going on at once, and kind of came face to face with depression and anxiety in Steph's life. And it felt like those first 2 years of Zeke's life and our church were just really hard. And it wasn't ever a question of like, are we going to stick this out together? But it was kind of a decision that Steph really led in of, we are going to fight for more than where we are right now and not just accept that this is just going to be like this. And there was suffering, especially for her, a lot of things she was going through, things out of her control. But in that time, like perseverance for us looked like learning how to communicate in counseling. It looked like for me going from like, I need to stop defaulting to just jumping into church stuff because that's easier for me.
Right.
Than being a present husband. It went to, I need to learn how to communicate with my wife and pray for my wife and my family and take ownership here and persevere through this. And it refined the heck out of us. And there's plenty more for us to go. But we just celebrated our 10th anniversary and talked about a lot of like, we've gone through some stuff together.
Yeah.
But
dude.
we were on our 10-year anniversary, and I really believe more passionate about each other.
Yeah.
Because of mostly all the hard things we've gone through in 10 years than we were on our honeymoon 10 years before. It's like a deeper level of passion and love that's been forged. Most of that's through the difficult times. And so maybe that will be an encouragement, sharing some of that to some other people who, man, life is brutal. Relationships are hard. We've endured a lot in this friendship and persevered through times where we're mad at each other, where, you know, we'd piss each other off. We'd do something that whatever and have to talk stuff out, but continue to persevere and with each other. And we've become, you know, refined through that process together and found more hope and more fun things that we get to be a part of through that. So it really is kind of a formula.
There is something
in
to
the
it,
difficulty.
man.
Yeah.
There was a girl that caught me in the lobby after on Saturday night, and she was like, I've been going through a lot in my life, and God just kept taking me to Romans 5. And she's like, and I've just kind of realized I need to just sit in solitude with him for hours, and has been doing that. And she's like, and in that time, like, the circumstances aren't changing right now, but my hope is changing and I'm changing.
Yeah.
And just spending time with him. She's like, I walked into church tonight with my friend and was like, if Romans 5 gets brought up tonight, I'll just know. Like, and I was like,
way.
I hope you see that God sees you right now, and he's just tapping you on the shoulder
Yeah.
to remind you of that, and that your perseverance right now is not for nothing.
That's so
But he is
wild,
building
dude.
something really, really beautiful through the pain that you're willing to sit in right now with him, and the struggle that you're willing to not hit the eject button and just try to jump out of as quick as you can. But as you're going through that valley with him, he's reminding you he's with you in that valley. So that's my hope, is that people will find that deeper passion of
cool
Jesus
story, man.
that is a level of beyond emotion or beyond circumstance, that allows you to see the hope of glory and the suffering today and go, all right, you're with me. We can walk through this.
It's crazy to think about that. That's my first time hearing that story. When we were workshopping your sermon, you didn't quite know what you wanted to preach about, but you knew Romans 5. You like just kept coming back to that passage as we were like talking through it.
Yeah.
It's
just cool how
unbelievable to
God
me
works
that
that
the
way.
Lord's like, hey, we're gonna hang out in Romans 5.
And that
today.
passage came to my mind for whatever reason right when we were when we were in Mexico after the story I told about baptizing Mike and Patty on vacation.
Dude.
Romans 5 just kept on coming up in my brain of like, there's something here and I don't quite know what it is.
Yeah.
But in that study and all that, so it's just cool how God is working, and there's probably a different way that different people had something else that's not that I did that.
Yeah.
It's just that he puts together these pieces to remind people he's with them, he sees them, he loves them. And that is, I think the beautiful thing about passion is it's like this thing that God really wants for us because it's so good for us, because it brings us back to his goodness and remembering what he's done and who he is in our lives.
It's fun to take a moment of like you're sharing about the last decade of your marriage and everything you and Steph have been through and gone through for both of you guys and grown through. And at the same time, you're still celebrating 10 years at a resort, and Steph's still evangelizing just like she always does. And you're always like stepping in and shepherding people and baptizing people. And it's like, there's something really pure about, as we continue to grow, we keep coming back to the same message and the same mission. And I think that's where the real passion is remembering like, this doesn't change. It doesn't like, we're going to keep growing, we're going to keep maturing, but the mission stays the same. There's something really cool about that.
That is cool. Yeah, it's back. It's the same message and mission. That's a really good way of saying
like
that.
you guys would have done the same thing 10 years ago on your honeymoon if it came up, but you probably wouldn't have had the same wisdom and it wouldn't have meant the same thing. There's just something cool about it.
Which is cool thinking about the disciples, because I don't think they really got much smarter in their like they didn't learn a bunch more information from once Jesus ascended back to heaven.
Yeah.
They just had the message.
No, they
and the
didn't
mission.
have the content.
No, they were writing the New Testament. They didn't have it to read.
Right.
Right. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like that. They didn't really gain a whole lot more. They just had what they knew to do.
Yes.
And they just did the things that they
just
did
did
at
it.
first. They
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
this is what we do. We tell people about Jesus. That's the one last practical thing I wanted to add in.
Yeah.
That I think cultivates passion is just telling stories and talking about things God has done.
Yeah.
It revives that passion in you, whether it's your testimony or something just like Romans 5 popped up and then God did this. I was talking to our buddy Corey a few weeks ago about a big prayer request, somebody in my life that's going through some things, and asking him to pray for that. Yeah. And he stopped me and he's like, dude, we need to just like tell each other stories of miracles. We need to just talk about things that God has done and remind each other of the God that we serve and the faith that we're called to have, because he can do this, he can heal this. And that is a place that revives passion in us. So
Man.
Stories, solitude.
Yeah. Testimonies, man. Shout out to baptism weekend coming up. There's a reason why it's the most powerful weekend of the year.
Yeah.
It's because you're going to preach the gospel and we're going to hear people's stories about what God's done in their life.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, man. It really is.
Same message, same mission. That's good. You want to give us a preview of the finale of Uncommon? We never thought it would end.
The finale
But all
of
good
Uncommon.
things must come to an end, except for
It is
eternity,
bittersweet.
which is forever.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
And the mission.
Uh-huh.
And the mission and the message.
That doesn't.
That's also
doesn't
something
end.
that gives you passion,
Oh yeah.
a mindset of eternity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's our buddy. Can I say
Should-
one more thing before
Go,
you do
please.
that? The last thing about passion that I'll ever say.
On the record, this is
yes.
the last statement of Watch Doug about passion.
This better be good. I can do this. No, we have a couple friends who left about 2 weeks ago to go to the Middle East to do mission work with the team, and they're going to be there for a couple months. And our friend Nate, who was in my office hanging with the three of us a couple days before his flight, was talking about everything that he's feeling.
Yeah.
And all the ingredients, if you will, that probably go into the pot that is called passion. And how even even like these nerves of, oh my gosh, but that guy lives almost like 1 foot here, 1 foot in eternity.
Mhm.
When I watch him worship on Sundays or Saturday evenings, especially the last Sunday right before he was about to hop on a flight and fly to Jordan, he was just like, man, like so in the presence of God.
Yeah.
I'm borrowing his car right now while he's gone.
That's right.
Because mine broke down. It was great timing.
Great
Thanks,
timing.
Nate. But even in his car, because he would drive Uber 1 or 2 nights a week. Not even for the job, but just because like he would pray for people and he would go to pick somebody up and be in conversation with God about, hey God, maybe I don't say anything. He kind of just never made it religious, but was, if I felt an opportunity just to encourage somebody or pray for somebody. And the stories that have probably taken place in that car and the prayer that's taken place in that car, this might sound, it's not going to sound strange to you. It might sound strange to somebody listening. I feel something that's been cultivated and created. It's like that car in some ways is like almost like our
Holy
sanctuary. It's like holy ground. It's like our sanctuary right downstairs where we have logged so many hours of people gathering and worshiping. And the presence of God is just feels very welcome. The presence of God feels very welcome in this car. And I feel like I get passion when I'm driving in it.
Awesome.
I'm so serious,
It's a
dude.
sweet car too.
Yeah, but it is. Yeah, but talking to him and his brother, every time I do, I leave with more passion. Because I feel like I'm talking to a couple of guys who genuinely think more about heaven than they do here. And make decisions for that. And their eternal mindset is contagious to me. Like it leaks out of them. And so that's why like even hearing those kinds of stories, borrow it from people who have passion, who have eternal mindsets, who have the stories of Uber driving 2 nights ago and they led somebody to Jesus. Man, the more that you're just around that, the more it builds your passion as well.
What's the quote about like people spend too much time thinking about these years when I spend most of mine? What is it?
Oh, that was Francis Chan. He's kind of the goat of eternal perspective preaching. You know, big time. And he said, you know, people often accuse me of going overboard, thinking about my first 10 billion years in eternity.
So great.
He says, I kind of think they go overboard thinking about their last 10 years on earth.
Jeez.
Yeah.
The other week,
Isn't that awesome?
There it is.
I went home and I went to my parents' church,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just so sweet. I sat there and it's like all old people, like 70 plus.
Yeah.
And they're like the young folks there, and they're
Mm-hmm.
and I just like
Youth is a spirit thing,
yeah, so true.
not an age
And
thing.
I just stood
Thank
there and I was just crying because I was like, look at all these people, like they have so much wisdom, and they're just worshiping like so genuine, and they just have been through a lot of stuff probably, and they're just like looking forward to the day that they get to have eternity. And I was just like, that like filled my passion just watching them and like seeing them, and I was like, I haven't even been through that kind of stuff that they've probably been through, and they are just so like on fire for the Lord, and like they don't care if they die tomorrow because they know where they're going type thing. And it's just it was just so sweet to like see that and see their like genuine like care and like love. They just didn't care. They were just
Awesome.
old and sweet. So sweet.
Yeah, the more I love that, the more we make our Christianity all about just, you know, God's good plans that he has for me in the next 5 years. That works to a point, and then it starts to backfire on you when it's only about that. And you had passion for like a few months because you're excited about those plans, but it's missing something. It's like it needs to breathe. It needs to breathe way beyond this into eternity.
It's funny, like when you're going to go on vacation in 6 months, the day when you book it, you're super passionate about the trip, and then you kind of forget about it for a while. And then like the week leading up, you're like, oh yeah. And you get super passionate again. It's kind of how our lives are in our faith. You're a teenager who says yes to Jesus and you're so fired up, and then life happens, and then you get to the end with that perspective. But it really would make more sense if you just got more passionate through the course of your faith in life, because you're just getting closer to it as you go.
Right.
So may we fight to be those people.
Yes.
Mhm.
Such a timely message.
Guard your
Indeed.
spirit. Guard
So
your
thank you.
spirit, your responsibility, your passion, your responsibility.
Oh, dude.
Jesus put it on the church is it Ephesus? Yeah.
Yeah.
Your passion, your responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't lose it. You left it.
Yes.
So come back to it and find it again.
That's good.
These next 2 weeks leading up to the election, best thing you can do is get really, really passionate about eternity
Mm-hmm.
and then work to bring heaven to earth here and now through how you talk to your neighbors and you talk to your friends and you guard your spirit against people who vote other than you.
Yes. Very good.
Wow.
Are you going to give us a preview or do you want it to be a secret?
Here's the
Or do you not
preview.
yet,
One
or
more
do you
thing
not
about-
yet know?
Here's the preview. You got to show up this weekend to hear what I'm going to talk about.
Because Ryan is still figuring it out. I bet.
No, I got it and I'm
Oh, okay,
passionate
good.
about it, but I'm saving the title because it might be my favorite title I've ever come up with.
Wow. Well, come to church this weekend. As always, thanks to Watch Doug. Thank you to Zeke and Will for starting this podcast. Kayla, great game today.
Thank
Very
you.
fun.
And
Can't
like,
believe we didn't get anointing.
yeah, that was, well, I can. Like, subscribe, share this.
Sure.
We're still trying to get to 1 billion followers. Okay, folks? So
Almost
help
there.
us out.
Help us out.